through some stuff. That's for damn sure. Window, let's do this. Okay, so let me know if you guys see this.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so let me get into full screen here. Hide. Awesome. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Okay, we're doing this week 2 of SEC1337. Where did that name come from? If you guys know LEET, SEC1337, get it? LEET. And where's 1 through 1336? They don't exist. I do what I want. So this week, it's week 2. We're going to be talking about personal individual security. This will be stuff that's directly applicable to you all. You can start to use and leverage this to protect your friends and family. There's 8 primary domains that we're going to cover today. Device security, so your phones, your tablets, your computers, all of that stuff. Then we're going to talk about your home network, so your Internet of Things, your all your smart stuff, networking. It's really important. Then email and communication security, or email security. It's like saying oil and water, but we're going to talk about modern secure messaging apps. Then browser security. So the browser is now kind of the new operating system. It's targeted very commonly because no matter what OS or platform you're on, you can still do targeted browser attacks. So it's really important to lock that down. And then secrets management or passwords, show you a way to defeat the challenges that you all have with passwords, because they stink, but they don't have to stink that bad. And then we're going to talk about authentication, multi-factor, the step beyond just passwords. Then open source intelligence, which is a way to find all the information you'd ever want about you and everyone else. And then digital risk management, which is like protecting your identity, protecting your credit and stuff. And so we're going to bounce into it. So I will write stuff, but in general, you're going to want to follow these slides. So device security, what should you do to keep your devices secure? I'll tell you. For one, keep your operating system updated. So for iPhone, iOS, Mac OS, keeping it updated is key because there's often security fixes and patches. So if you don't keep your stuff updated, you can be vulnerable to any number of attacks. I recommend auto update for your OS specifically at home. That's really all you need to know. For enterprise, there's a variety of tools to manage larger fleets and flocks, but that's beyond the scope of this particular conversation. So So yep, keep your OS up to date, OS updated. You also need to keep your applications updated. So another sort of easy way is like if you use Apple, have your Apple Store apps updated. Android. For Windows, it's tricky because there's so many different types of apps, but in general, if there's an auto update feature, I highly recommend it. That's the best way, short of like running your own like MDM, SCCM, JAMP. Like I said, it's enterprise. That's the best thing you can do, because if your apps aren't updated, same deal. You can be vulnerable. The thing with security is that there's layers, which we kind of talked about last week. And if you can compromise one layer, you can compromise the entire device and host. So if you're able to attack an application that then has the ability to read directories and files and access your contacts and pictures, these other layers are ineffective. So you need to do all these things, not individually, these particular things. And then for the hardware itself, there's a stuff called firmware, and firmware is essentially like securing the underlying hardware. So your cameras, your phones, if there's specific hardware device updates, apply those. Without those, you could have a variety of hardware-based attacks, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, so on and so forth. And as another thing that you must do, full disk encryption, if it's supported. So really, Samsung phones are, your Windows computers use BitLocker by default. Macs use File Vault. There's a third-party tool that works across them called Veracrypt. It's the new version of TrueCrypt. That was a strange thing if you want to look into it. TrueCrypt all of a sudden was abandoned because there were some issues found in it. I won't go into it now, but it forked off into Veracrypt. But that's really cool. It allows you to create like two different partitions. So the idea here is like you have one encrypted drive and then there's one that's invisible. So if you ever have to go to court, they can't actually see that drive. They can't say force decryption. It doesn't exist. So that's really cool if you're ultra paranoid and you work in security like myself and others here. And also another important thing is the encryption key is sensitive, so don't just write it down. Store it in Keeper. We'll talk about Keeper later on. That's a password secrets manager. It's the best. And then also, you're writing this down. So you also should not just rely on a PIN or just a password for your device. Set up at least some kind of biometric thing. Windows has, Windows Hello. Mac has fingerprint, Face ID. iPhone has the same Face ID and a PIN. So that adds another layer. It makes it more secure than just a simple password. You're right, like pizza 1 2 3, which I know some of you had that password. It's okay, I'll let it slide. And that's important. So, and then beyond that, so this is mostly specifically targeting like, let's say Windows and Mac computers, right? But you need to run what's called next-gen anti-malware antivirus, right? So next-gen because the previous gen was crap. I mean, it's all still crap, right? If you only run it. So next-gen anti-malware, it's not just antivirus because there's viruses, Trojans, worms, ransomware, this, that. It tries to provide you security from the gamut of different threats. But next-gen anti-malware is only signature-based, so it's only going to know heuristic patterns of known malware, right? It's not going to actually be able to identify emerging threats and stuff that's in the wild that hasn't been documented. So if you can, specifically on computers, so you want to also enable what's called endpoint detection and response, EDR. And so EDR is essentially behavioral anomaly-based protection. So it'll start to look at your machine and say, okay, you're not normally running Python. All of a sudden, though, there's some Python interpreted code that starts running, and it's doing weird stuff to your OS. Block that, right? It's not a signature. It's a bizarre, anomalous behavior. So those in conjunction provide you robust endpoint protection. One of the best sort of software for this at home easily is Bitdefender Total Security. It's also very cheap. On the enterprise, you've got stuff like CrowdStrike and SentinelOne, but this is the best for home, like objectively. Just look at all the reviews, and I recommend it. Then some other fun stuff that you can do, canary tokens, right? So, you guys know my talk, if not, about Honeypot Boo Boo. You can use some specific device canary tokens that are incredibly valuable to inform you in real time if you've been breached. For example, so WireGuard. WireGuard's a new VPN technology that's in the process of supplanting OpenVPN. It's faster, it uses Salsa 2020 for message ciphering. It's just a better protocol. What you can do with Canary, and it's free, go to their site, make a WireGuard VPN profile, scan it, add it to your host. The idea is, and you make it something appealing. The idea is that if an adversary gets on your phone, starts snooping around, they're going to want to enumerate your config and they're going to enable your VPN. You're not going to because you know it's bogus. The moment they do that, you'll get an alert, a Slack alert, a PagerDuty alert, email. You'll know in real time if your device has been compromised. It's more common than you'd think. There's probably a dozen people I've helped identify this, mostly because of the NSO Pegasus spyware that came out a couple years ago. Nasty. And so if you have that, then the next step would be to use this thing called iMazing to do forensics and this and that. But the point is knowing that your phone's been pwned, because otherwise, how would you know? Knowing's half the battle. And then, yeah, that's that. So canarytokens.org, free thing. In a nutshell, that's device security. So, and also please hold questions to the end, but feel free to drop anything in the chat window, which I'll get to later. Okay, home network security. So shameless plug for Firewall. Not really, because it's an awesome product. So Firewall is the sort of result of a bunch of former Cisco engineers that got tired of Cisco's BS, a la carte charging for what used to be free open source products like Snort and Suricata and OpenDNS. And so what Cisco did, They basically made a device that ended up costing $12,000. Their Cisco ASA, Adaptive Security Appliance, which is overblown. The hardware itself is like $800. So the guys at Firewalla and gals, they reverse engineered it. They made this device for this particular one is $300. Incredible. You put it in your network. It monitors for like inbound and outbound connections. It blocks people trying to hack you with a layer 7 next-gen firewall. It encrypts your DNS. It encrypts through a virtual private network. It also has a VPN server, meaning anywhere I go in the world, I have a direct connection back to my house, back to my connection. It runs on dark fiber, so it's actually faster than just straight up internet. And I get access. So like I have a connection to my brother in Austin. I've got one to Richmond. It's incredible. And the Firewalla Purple is meant to be mobile. And so an additional capability that's really neat, the Firewalla Purple will connect to any Wi-Fi, secure, open, whatever. It connects to it, and then your devices connect to the Firewalla. In the process, it secures your communication. It also makes it really easy when you travel. So when I go to hotels, I'm ridiculous, and then I bring and it's like just a bunch of crap, right? And I'm an expert now at loading and unloading just volumes of stuff. So I'll bring a Google Home, Amazon Alexa, all these devices, and when you plug the firewall in and the devices, they all automatically connect because they have the same Wi-Fi. Saves you countless hours. You're more secure. It's the best $300 you can possibly spend. And so Firewalla does protect against, when you have it, it protects your devices, your smart devices, against, being exposed on the internet. But without it, you often have these dumb ass smart devices, or IoT, or Bruce Schneider calls it IT, which is Internet of Insecure Things, which is a better way of referencing it. And so the Internet of Insecure Things is all the smart stuff, your smart fridge, your smart coffee. And so I have a funny story about IoT. So what happened was I was doing an engagement for a client, like a red team engagement a couple of years ago, and I used a service called Shodan. So Shodan just scans the internet. It's free. It tells you all the devices that are online, that should or shouldn't be, right? Because a lot of times with these smart devices that aren't behind a Firewalla, they use this thing called universal plug and play to expose a port to connect. And then in the process, outbound, in the process, you can reverse tunnel in with that port. And often these devices have default credentials. So I'm doing an engagement and I find a smart Keurig, literally a coffee machine on Shodan. And so I go and it's using default credentials of Keurig. And what's crazy is this coffee machine used an account to read directory information from the profile of the company. And so they could curate each cappuccino to the user, except the account was stored in plain text. So I was able to use that account to then pivot into their network. Within 2 hours, I completely owned them with a coffee machine. So just think about that. And then another sort of story that this keeps happening, but it's unbelievable that it's even a thing. About 3 weeks ago, there's a family in Florida, right? And they're about to go to vacation. They have all these smart devices, this smart baby monitor, garage door opener, video camera. Their smart baby monitor was exposed. It got hacked. So these bad guys, what they did, they pivoted to the camera. They waited for the family to leave. When they left, they pivoted to the smart garage door opener. Went in, stole all their shit, went out, wiped the footage. So now the family's in court being accused of insurance fraud. Isn't that crazy? So that's the sort of stuff that pisses me off, but also like why you need a Firewalla to prevent that from ever happening. But like that, for me, is just absolutely mind-blowing. And so yeah, IoT. Yeah, and then like I said, the VPN server is super dope. So it uses OpenVPN or WireGuard, so you can connect back to it from anywhere on any device. And so that allows you to encrypt your connection not only, but also then tunnel, like I said, tunnel your Firewalla to Firewalla. It's amazing. Like it runs faster than straight up over the internet. Very cool. So, and then you also want to use a VPN client. So I recommend, ExpressVPN again, and I'll say this authoritatively, it is the best third-party VPN client. And the main reason, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's fast as lightning. It works with any device. You can use it on 5 accounts, and it's got config files to natively hook into Firewalla. So what's cool with Firewalla is you define different clients. You say, okay, I want this group to go over the DC VPN. This one goes to Tokyo, this, that. You can do it on any device in group, so you can send traffic multiple ways. And no matter, as long as you're on the firewall, you'll always be protected and encrypted. It doesn't matter what your device is doing. But on top of that, they've got clients for Linux, Mac, OS, everything. Fast, runs in the background. It's actually faster than just using your native ISP, which is also kind of mind-blowing. But a VPN, virtual private network, it essentially allows you to connect over any insecure network and encrypt it. And it also allows you to change your IP, change your region. So if you want to watch whatever, Downton Abbey, and it's only in the UK, you just fake your location in the UK. If you want to, any number of things, it protects you from malware, crypto jacking, all that stuff. And literally, I think a subscription is $100 a year for a family for 5 devices. It kicks ass. So use that. And then, whoopsie daisy. Cool. So that's home network security in a nutshell. You ever see Austin Powers? This is me in a nutshell. Okay. Yeah. In other news, I need to be checked into the hospital. Just kidding. No. All right. So secrets, passwords, all that. This is fun. This is probably the most important thing. The main reason it's the most important is because look at that statistic. 92% of known data breaches, according to the IBM breach report, are the result of some sort of abuse of credentials. So you've got password spraying, which is like taking a weak password and testing it against every account. You're going to get a hit. Baseball 123, fall 2024, and that gives you valid accounts. Then there's credential stuffing. Credential stuffing, where you essentially take someone's account that's been compromised, say on LinkedIn, and you then target all the other services, knowing that they're probably going to reuse the same password. LinkedIn then hits their 401k, hits their mortgage. It's terrible. But if you only have a weak password and not multi-factor, which we'll get to, you're screwed. So what we really need to do here, and this is what they don't teach you in grade school or anywhere, if people knew this, 92% of breaches wouldn't happen. Here's how it goes. And you're going to have fun with this, for real. So how do you make a strong password that's easy for you to remember, but impossible to guess? Well, I'll tell you how. 4 steps. I'm going to go through. This song's been stuck in my head, other than Freaking Leash, is that Wheatus, Teenage Dirtbag. Cause I'm just a teenage dirtbag. So what you do, you take the chorus or unquote, that's memorable. And what you do is you write it out. So I'm going to take the chorus. Cause, I see just a teenage dirtbag baby. Listen to Iron Maiden, baby, with me. Right? So pretty easy to remember that sentence, I hope. But it can be something more meaningful, like Socrates or Ricky. You can't judge the cover of a book by its look. It's water under the fridge. It doesn't take rocket appliances to figure out what's going on here, Leahy. Fill in the blank. So then what you do, take the first letter of each word. C-I-J-A-T-D. Arrange it sequentially. Capitalize at least one letter for complexity requirements, but other ones that make sense. So C, capital C, then I, J, A, T, D, L, T, J, M, W, M. Okay? Then, so that's step 1, B. And then you take, for the next one, just add a number. Current year, birthday, whatever. So add 2024 to the end. Last step, add a special character, again, for complexity requirements, or multiple. Let's say add an exclamation. Now, this password here looks like gibberish. It only means something to you. It means nothing to anyone else. If you want to test this, there's a link there to put it in, what used to be How Secure Is My Password, which is now security.org. But this is a bit misleading. Security.org just looks at cracking and brute force. It's not looking at dictionaries and lists. So it may give you false hope. You might type in baseball 126 exclamation point. Sounds great, right? It isn't, because it's trivial. And so it may say it takes 1,000 years. In reality, it's going to take like 10 seconds, right? But this password has the benefit of length and complexity. It's all about how long it is. That's what she said. But it's also important to have entropy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. The NIST recommendation for length is 12, so anything more. And like I said, you can add, some more characters if it tickles your fancy. Now you got 19, so on and so forth. But anything over 12, it's great. And you only need to know that one password, because once that is there, we just use that to then log into Keeper. So Keeper kicks ass. Keeper is the only password manager that's designed with zero-knowledge architecture, and thus is the only one that I trust, because zero-knowledge architecture is this concept of designing it so that Keeper can never just break into your account arbitrarily, right? They don't have a backdoor. Zero-knowledge means you're the client, only you have the keys. They store the public key. If you get locked out of your account, you're up shit creek without a paddle, as my dad would say. And but everything else, LastPass, OnePass, Dashlane, they all have a backdoor. They claim that they're zero knowledge, they're not. If there's a way for an admin to override and get into a vault, it's not zero knowledge. Also, Craig Luthi, the CTO, is awesome. And they now do way more than others. They can store two-factor codes. You can store digital payments, do DevOps, kicks ass. It's great. It's not super expensive for your family. Look at Keeper. And then Keeper will automatically generate passwords for sites. It'll automatically input them. It'll automatically input two-factor codes. It's not only more secure, but it's faster. There's a browser extension, a desktop app, this, that, and the other. And then you can protect access to Keeper with biometric passkeys. You really only have to enter this password once, and then you can move on to stronger authentication, which is the next topic. So authentication, right? I touched on this briefly in fundamentals last week, and there are 3 pillars, like I said, to prove right now there's a 4th in quantum, but when it's easy, and just leave it at that. If you want to learn more, week 16 is a bonus class on July 19th, and it'll be focused on quantum crypto. But you're going to need to know this stuff beforehand. So authentication, 3 pillars. This is all you have. There's many types of things within those pillars that you can test. So for example, something right? You can validate this, and this is not enough, because this is a password, a PIN, knowledge-based authentication, which is also garbage, or secret questions, also garbage. But knowledge-based authentication, if you all are familiar with these questions that try to verify your life. Oh, what year did you see that Limp Bizkit concert, at State College? Or what color was your 2008 Honda Elantra? What street did you live in? The problem is, and I'll talk about this in the OSINT page, anyone can find this out. It's not private information. And so it's a false sense of security. So just as passwords suck, so does knowledge-based authentication. This entire pillar on its own is garbage. Because even this question was asked to me recently about, if you have a strong password, isn't that enough? Why do you need other factors? I'll tell you why. There's a couple reasons. Even if you have a 64-character password, you can still get phished, right? You can have the best password ever. You can be keylogged. You can, any number of things. It's about defense in depth. Passwords, pins are not enough. Now, there's this funny thing where people talk about 2-step authentication, not the same as 2-factor. 2-step means password plus pin, or password plus pin, 3-step, not multi-factor. Important to know that. Then there's something you have. So that's a physical thing in your possession, typically a phone. All right, but there's factors in that phone. They're not all created equal. For example, SMS is garbage. Short message service, it's garbage because the code's sent in plain text. It's been compromised by Signal 7 in 2017, and there's SIM swapping. But it's better than nothing, but it's not very good. Then you got what are called time-based one-time passcodes, Google Authenticator. Soft token runs on your phone, whatever. It's a little better in that you use an encrypted seed, it's on your phone, but it's still sent in plain text, which is not good. And if your phone gets pwned, it's worthless. And then you've got push. Push is the best of the phone base because it's encrypted end-to-end, the challenge response. But again, your phone is your weakest link. If you have that Pegasus spyware, you're screwed, right? So the best thing to use in this category is a hardware key. Some of you may have heard of YubiKeys. YubiKey is awesome. I have one in my computer. It's a nano, but there's physical large ones. The best one they have right now, in my opinion, is called the YubiKey Bio, because it combines this factor with, spoiler alert, the next one, which is something you are. And what are you? You're a beautiful princess. But let's talk about your attributes. So how do you prove you are who you say you are biometrically? Your face, your butt, I'm just kidding, face, retinal, voice, fingerprint. Those are 3 ways. Now, all 3 pillars are ideal, right? That's the holy trinity of authentication right now until you look at quantum. I'll give you a hint. Category 4 in quantum is called something about about where you are. And this is all kinds of trippy stuff like, whoa, what's the temperature outside? What's your IP address? What's the fan speed of your computer? What Bluetooth devices are you? Builds a confidence profile, gives you proportionate access. That's all I'm going to say for now. But if you can at least have 2-factor, ideally this category, something you know and something you have. But password plus whatever is way better than just password, right? Because you get pwned, one of your accounts then is used to completely wreck you otherwise. That is in a nutshell. Cool. Browser security. Like I said, browser's the new OS. It is commonly targeted. It doesn't matter if you're running a Chromebook, an iPad, an iPhone, browsers are pretty much uniform. So if you can hit the browser, you can completely wipe out, or you can just compromise the device. And thanks to the beautiful invention known as the cloud, you can then, spread your seed or your whatever to the rest of your devices. So protecting the browser, in my opinion, is probably the most critical thing as far as an attack vector, like an initial attack vector, right? So browser. Shameless plug for Push Security, mostly because Push is awesome. It's being funded by Thanks Canary and Duo, but they found a way to protect your browser, not with a stupid endpoint agent or a CASB, but literally just using social logins like Google and GitHub. Plus, there's a lightweight browser extension. That's it. And with just that, they're able to tell you things like what sites have you reused your password? What apps have you accessed? Just knowing, and the whole idea of Push is security can't just come in and mandate and say, do this thing. It starts with knowing that, okay, maybe we only endorse Dropbox, but people are using Box, Google Drive, unsanctioned, but they're out there. We can't pretend like they don't exist, or that security says, you must use Asana and expect people to not use whatever, something else. So knowing that, it identifies all the apps, then it annoys the user. For example, if it says, okay, this app's unsanctioned, use Google Drive, send a Slack alert, acknowledge. But most commonly it says this, your password is weak, or you're using your Okta password on Amazon, which is bad because Okta is single sign-on. It's used to get to all your apps. So if Amazon gets compromised, Okta gets compromised, everything gets compromised, right? So you want to know this. It even tells you now about multi-factor if it's enabled. It's incredible. This company has made more progress in a short amount of time than anyone with new features. They just released something now that adds phishing protection. So remember I said about the passwords can be phished? This is true, but Push has a way of detecting a doppelganger domain and a phishing domain and alerting you saying, this isn't keeper.com, this is Kepper or whatever, and it'll annoy you and it'll send you a Slack message and acknowledge it. Incredible. It's free for up to 10 users, so it should cover you and your friends and family. And it's amazing. And they just got entered into this Gartner category called Identity Threat Detection and Response. They talk about, if you look at the sort of evolution of attacks, right, you've got shadow IT and you've got shadow apps. And shadow identity is this concept that if you work at a company like Google, you're naturally going to use your Google account to log into all kinds of other services. So how do you even know where what services are out there? Because your identity can, like I said, it goes everywhere, places you don't know, and it can completely wreck you if it ends up on vulnerable services. Oh yeah, Push also looks at third-party integrations and OAuth and allows you to kill, for example, Google, Zoom will request explicit permissions on Google Calendar to write, read, whatever. HubSpot, they over permission it, and if one of those apps gets pwned, then they can pivot in and compromise your entire Google suite, which is bad. So use this. And browser extensions generally are terrible, because they are also over permissioned. If you want to look at just how risky they are, Duo made this thing called, it's funny, it's called Crexcavator, CRX. Prexcavator. It's a service that gives you the security score of every extension, how risky it is, what permissions is it asking for, does it send data elsewhere. Most of them are really terrible, but there are a few that are good. One, Keeper. Keeper, the extension just extends the capabilities. Like I said, it'll check for phishing. It will automatically input passwords, two-factor codes. It'll prompt you if you want to save a password. It does all this cool stuff. And it's you know, as far as extensions go, it's solid. Push is obviously one that you need to also deploy. Then there's a couple others. There is a thing called Privacy Badger, made by the IEEE, and that blocks all like trackers, ads, everything. Like it completely kills most websites. And so you'll see, but it's kind of like an ad block, and you'll see sites that'll be like, please allow us because we're going to spam the hell out of you. And then Privacy Badger, you can either allow it or you can ask yourself, do I really want to be on a site that's making me surrender my privacy? Probably not. So I just tell people, think twice about anything that requires that. And then ExpressVPN, that's another browser extension. So in order to leverage the full capabilities of the client, use the browser extension. Beyond that, nothing's really worth doing. If you want a non-security one that's interesting, Wapalizer, it tells you all the technology being used on a website. So if you go to like Google or Facebook, it'll tell you all the front end stuff, the scripting, the typefacing. It's a pretty cool extension, but that's about it. Anything else is probably bogus. Don't use extensions or crap. All right, let's talk about communication and email security. Email security is like lamb and tuna fish or oil and water, right? Anyone that says email security is fooling themselves. Why? Because email was designed by DARPA. It was designed to send messages between universities and military. Security was not considered. And there's a theme, if there's any theme from this class, it's that you can't bolt security on, right? You need to build it in natively. It needs to be part of the design process. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And so there's been a lot of initiatives to make email secure, like SPF, single policy framework, DKIM, domain key, image messaging, DMARC, domain, I forget. But anyway, spam filtering, right? They've been moderately effective, but not really. If you look at all the email attacks, phishing, it's all email, especially this new stuff like business email compromise. It's a hard problem to solve, right? And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have to trust email from partners. And if partners get compromised, then it's easy enough to compromise others. Also, there's this new rise. This is awesome. Well, or scary, depending on who you talk to. There's this new type of domain, relatively new, called homoglyphic, that pretty much email just does not detect. So for example, Bank of America, you can register bank with like of America with a acrylic A accented like Spanish.com. You can register a name sheet. Most browser security does not convert it to puny code. It just passes it through. And so think about the destruction you could cause. Send an email from CEO to assistant, tell assistant, wire money to CFO, offshore account, boop, pound. So if you send an email from John.Moynihan at Bank of America, try it for me. No, I mean, or don't, because you could go down a rabbit hole of destruction, just saying. So rather than just rely on email, let's look at stuff like messaging apps that are built with security in mind. So Keybase was great until Zoom bought them and drove them to the ground, but it's still solid. It's an encrypted messaging app. It also gives you 250 gigs of encrypted storage, which is really nice, but it hasn't really been updated because Zoom is a garbage company when it comes to security. So Keybase was fine. Signal is solid, you know, Marlon Moxie Spike or whatever, he designed it. The only problem with Signal that they're trying to get away from is that you need a phone number. Now, Signal's working on this non-phone number identity thing, but it's going to lead to tons of abuse. So, but neither here nor there. I trust it as far as the code, and it's been audited, so that's cool. There's also this thing called Wicker Pro, similarly, that's pretty solid and whatever. But also, oh, sorry, for email, there's one other thing to notice. There is one thing that does improve the security. It's called PGP, pretty good privacy. So all this does, though, is it adds, you know, cryptographic capabilities to messaging. So it allows you to encrypt email, sign it, which is improvement. It's not going to fix the whole issue of spam or filtering, but if you only communicate over encrypted mail, it's really hard to like defeat email that way. But who else is going to do that? The trouble again is like building it in. So like Google has a confidential mode, but it requires someone else with Google to have it enabled. So it's not something that you can implicitly turn on after the fact. That's the problem. It wasn't designed that way from the beginning. So this problem will never go away. And yeah, so secure messaging, Slack is fine, but just know that Slack isn't actually encrypted end to end. Well, they talk a big talk, right? Like WhatsApp and whatever. But reality, think about who manages WhatsApp. Facebook. Do you think they care about your privacy? How fast are they going to turn over your data to law enforcement at a subpoena? Faster than you can say, hot diggity damn. So don't trust them. That's that. Email communication security. Awesome. We're doing good. 2 more domains. Open source intel. This is fun. There are people that have made their careers out of this. Open source intelligence, also known as OSINT. It's this idea, it's the art of finding information about people, places, and things using publicly available, thank you, you're the best, available sources, right? En masse. So like, it's amazing how many people just tell the world about all their secrets on Facebook, Instagram. Like the NSA, you know, through Prism was, rather than spying on people, they just went upstream to all the social media providers because that's where all the data is at. It's like, think before you just post all your shit because you're gonna fuck yourself. Pardon my French. So you know, there's a lot of ways to do this en masse. You can write your own automation, but there's great services that will automate. So go to People, for example, or Spokio, make a free account, do a search on yourself and your family. Pretty damn good. It'll tell you your name, addresses, criminal records, all this stuff using publicly available court records, on and on. Pretty amazing. Same thing with like Been Verified. Been Verified is more specifically for background checks, which is fascinating. And then the best of the best, or what this is free, OSINT framework. Just Google it. It breaks it down into what are you trying to find? Are you trying to find a email, an IP, a phone number? It then forks out and branches into, okay, if there's an email, use one of these 1,000 services. Boop, boop. And they have code on GitHub to automate this. You can use this thing called Discover by Lee Bard that tags into this, and this thing called the Harvester. And the Harvester basically does all the automation. It'll ask for your API keys for various services like LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever, and then it'll go through and it builds a report. Incredibly powerful. And then for the security people in the world, there's this thing called Spiderfoot, designed by Steve Metcalf. And this is, in addition to OSINT, it allows you to look at stuff specifically related to infrastructure and security. So like Spiderfoot will add threat intel. So if you want to look at like, okay, what credentials are on the dark web? Where are we being mentioned, you know, on the dark web? Do we have company accounts floating around Tor? Infrastructure. So it adds a threat intelligence piece. We'll talk about that in week 13. Not important now, but Spiderfoot you can deploy yourself, or you can pay a pretty small amount to have it hosted. It's incredible. It's really powerful. So that's OSINT. And there's a really interesting talk at DEF CON in 2018 about this lady who there was this piece of shit dude in the UK who was like killing animals and making videos, and this lady went like Liam Neeson on him and used OSINT to find him, track him down, and kill him. Not actually kill him, but like apprehend him in 4 days. Like law enforcement couldn't find this person. This is like, you talk about the world of just like undercover independent spies. This is it. If you want a career in security and don't know where to start with OSINT. You'd be amazed at how powerful it is, and also how interesting it is, and how stupid people are. You know, it's like if you just put a picture online, your metadata is going to tell you the geolocation, you know, like using something called Maltego. Don't be dumb. Well, or if you're a scumbag, do be dumb, because what else do you know other than be dumb? All right. And then the last bit is what I call digital risk management. This is like trying to protect your digital identity because it's increasingly having real world effects. I mean, think about how your life can be shattered, like from a credit breach, like Equifax. Everyone's screwed, right? It's like very real world. You know, you can't use your credit. People are taking out loans in your names, all this stuff. And so you have to find ways to like know that this is happening for you and your family, and also protect. And so, you know, one of the first things you can do is just monitor it. So there's a ton of, you know, Equifax, TransUnion, et Experian, they were all forced to provide credit monitoring and identity monitoring, and so on. But and so they provide this free service. But then there's a lot of other services that kind of do it, like Keeper, LastPass, like on top of it, been verified. That's better. Don't subscribe to multiple times because it's redundant info, but just having an alert of like, oh, new credit report, new password or email ends up on the dark web, any number of things just to know in real time that you're possibly getting compromised. So that's the first step. And then, you know, there's other things like Keeper and Proton Mail. And beyond that, just using a service like BreachWatch from Keeper, which is really cool. It focuses specifically on the dark web. So BreachWatch, like it monitors for data, like for breaches, and then it immediately, and it uses this thing called Have I Been Pwned? And then it starts to monitor that database to see when it ends up on the dark web. And the moment this happens, data bomb. There's like all these, there's literally 60 services that start to report on breaches, like Risk IQ, Digital Shadows, Pulse Dive, and they just literally report on it and roll it up to the security outlets. And they're like, you know, and then you get monitored. Because then if that happens, that means that if you use one account with the same password, you better stop doing that, you know, especially if it's a site that has a lot of exposure, because then they'll just pivot into your other stuff. And then there's services like LifeLock and stuff that's specifically like protecting your digital identity. I think this is going to be more and more important in the future, where like you're going to need to know digitally or physically in that moment if someone's trying to hack you, right? It's not going to just be taking your stuff and putting it on this separate web. It's going to be people are in real time trying to hack your brain, like Matrix style. So, you know, like LifeLock and all this stuff is going to be critically important. Yeah, so those are the main pillars. Individual physical security, the stuff you can do now. It's really important. You know, security is everything. It's everything and it's everywhere. And I hope that this was informative. So I wanted to open up to any questions, comments, concerns, or bewilderment. Also, I'd love to hear what your passwords are. Just kidding. No. Let me stop sharing. Let's see here. Stop presenting. Awesome. Anyone out there? A couple people. What's happening, y'all? Oh, good time. 45 minutes. Drew, I know you're security dude. Travis, what do you got for me? Am I just full of it?
No. What do you think helpful for people to understand? Like, what are some of these resources that you use on a regular to find a lot of this information?
Yeah, so I'm going to send out the notes with those links, but like in general, to do OSINT, right? Spiderfoot, I use that often. The free service I've deployed. Spokio, people, like I have a membership to Spokio. It's worth it. I want to say it's like $10 a month. So I use that to run reports. If you're a little more technical, look into Discover. It's a free set of scripts for Linux. And like I said, it'll tell you anything about a person or an organization. It'll also do like passive enumeration, scanning of ports, DNS, and all that stuff. So lots of free services, and the OSINT framework as well. That's more like as needed, not like automated and whatever. But so the OSINT framework is the best. Good question, Travis. How about Firefly's Ape Note Taker? What do you got for me? It's a bot.
How about this hardware kind of
The YubiKey?
Yeah, the YubiKey. How would you recommend like someone who hasn't done any of this to just get started using that?
Yeah, YubiKey is literally plug and play, right? So when you plug it in, it can be used as a couple different devices, but in the world of hardware keys and auth, there's a couple different protocols. WebAuthn, FIDO2, those are all kind of the same for like using a hardware key generally to prove your identity. There's this new thing called passkeys that are an improvement where you don't even need a password. It essentially takes something you have and something you are and creates a strong cryptographic signature that you can then use Keeper to use. But it's literally plug and play. There's different types. Like there's the Nano, which just stays in your computer. Then there's one you carry around and plug it in as needed. But that's annoying and I forget it. But it has such cool capabilities. You can use it to sign PGP messages, store SSH keys for servers. The coolest thing that I do for passwords that I tell people is so there's two slots on there. The first one's your UBCO one-time passcode. You know, like I said, WebAuth and FIDO2. But the second slot, if I hold down the little gold thing for 3 seconds, it adds a static password. So what that, and up to 64 characters. So that means that I can use a really terrible password like pizza, because then it appends gibberish. So my character now becomes 60, 70 characters, like great. And you only have to remember 5. So like if you have to use passwords, like this is normally what I do when we move to password lists. Like early on, if people start complaining about, I don't want to remember this password, right? I'm like, okay, don't. Type in, baseball, use the UB key to output a password. Then you can automate once per year per the policy, automatically changing the password. They never have to know it. They never have to enter it again.
Sick.
That's how you do it. I've done this for 4 companies. Incredibly effective. It's dope. I think they're $50 best. They have like a regular security key that doesn't have those capabilities. That's like $20, and Google has a Titan key, which is fine to get started with just WebAuth. But being able to use your UB key to like multi-factor into servers and stuff, and like that stuff's awesome. So how they were, and the bio one, like I said, they added the biometric thing. There's a UB key where you just put your fingerprint down, and then you use that as your factor. Incredible. So highly recommend UB key. Was that? Yeah, right on. Drew, how you doing, man? What's happening?
Hey, doing good. Great presentation, by the way. I do want to add one thing to the list of browser extensions. I think that Privacy Badger might already cover this use, but Facebook container or something similar for like social accounts. Basically, if you log into like Facebook and want to stay logged in without them tracking you all over the web, then you can do that with an extension called Facebook container.
Cool. I didn't even know about that. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, you can do that with pretty much any social media website. And if you don't know already, like let's say you're logged into Facebook and you go to another website that has Facebook comments at the bottom. That means Facebook knows that you just visited that website.
Super cookies.
Yeah, like super cookies, exactly.
That's good stuff. Yeah, those are insidious. That's basically like you were saying, you talk to Alexa, next thing you know, you get a text message about diapers, or whatever, because it's everywhere listening and your data is just passed around indiscriminately.
So
Great stuff.
Is there a mobile application version of this extension? Because most people use Facebook, they're going to be doing it on their phone, not necessarily on Chrome phone browser, right?
Oh, for the app. Yeah, for the app. That's a good question. Not one that I'm sure
Wallet
about.
can help with that. I also use OneBlocker.
Okay.
Yeah, the reality is like phones are kind of behind the security suites because it's just they're just now thinking about it, but it's incredibly vulnerable too, because everyone's on their phone, right? And then if you hit your phone now with iCloud, the architectures are converging, so you can mess up your iPad, like not entirely, but it's just a matter of time before you get pwned, and your phone and everywhere where you have a device is completely screwed, So
We saw this like special on this dude who would social engineer people to be like, hey man, can I get your contacts, and like watch them put in their key, and then
change the biometric.
then later on
wow,
steal their phone, get into all their apps, transfer money, delete all of their photos through iCloud.
Wow.
And then just like completely delete everything.
And then resells, he sells the thing on the black market.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you make a ton of money before you got caught. But you just lock people out of their own phone.
Yeah.
Their entire
20 seconds.
iCloud.
Oh yeah, because it's all together. It's like once you get that one password, you're screwed.
And so Apple to talk about security updates, like they released a update for the OS that has like a specific feature to deter that.
It's cool.
You still have to go update and then manually go turn that on.
It's tough. It's like the hoops that people have to jump through to get to that point are tough, and they're ones in which bad guys are willing to jump through because they see the reward at the end. They're doing it for a very specific purpose, and security is very ephemeral and like non-tangible until it messes you up, right? And then you're like, I need security. But until then, that's why a lot of companies just don't invest in security till they get breached. But again, it's not a matter of if, it's when.
You can't bolt it on.
You can't bolt it on. It just doesn't work. Look at email. It's going to be like the email to email, or the answer to email security is to not use email, if you can help it. Simple as that. Right on. Jennifer, how you doing? What did you think of this? Bueller. That's all right. It's cool. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll wrap it up here. It's been caught enough like And this has been fun. So I hope this is useful. But hit me up anytime, Justin@radzen.io, or if you're on Slack, you know, you can hit me up directly. Next week, we're going to be talking about, I think, network security. So more detailed stuff around firewall, talking about remote access, east, west, north, south traffic, DNS. Specifically, this is more for the network security engineers. This isn't, you know, this was the one segment about individuals that not necessarily security minded, but this, from here on out, it's going to progress and build your domain knowledge so that you can ultimately become a security professional, or at the very least understand at least some of what I'm talking about with quantum cryptography. So if there's nothing else, farewell, friends. Thanks for being here. Take care.
So, like,